Educate Tomorrow leaders and where they're from. And we're with Miss Virginia here today.
Thank you.
So we're gonna start off about where you were living in Africa.
Awesome. You'd like to know where I live in
Yeah.
Africa. So I'm actually originally from Wisconsin, and my heritage is from, my grandmother was an immigrant from Poland, and a lot of Polish immigrants moved to Wisconsin. So for me, when I was growing up in that environment, I really wanted to see and explore the world. So I learned at a very young age, when I was about your age, about 12 years old, I heard about a program called the Peace Corps. And the United States has an organization that you can serve in about 2.5 years in a country that the United States is partners with. And there's 3 goals for the Peace Corps. The first goal is that we want to be diplomats of America to other countries. So bringing over American ideas, ideals, and share that with the country that we're serving. The second goal is that we learn about the country and the environment that we're staying in, so that when we come back to the United States, we can make good policy recommendations and have a worldview lens of the world, so that I can be a more effective citizen and leader. And then the third goal is to try to do something good while you're there, help and enable the community. And so I was very interested in learning French, because French at the time was the diplomatic language. So if I ever wanted to work for the United Nations, I needed to be fluent in French. And so I requested that my position be posted in West Africa, because I knew there were a lot of people in West Africa that spoke French, because West Africa was a French colony, which means the French came to Africa, sort of claimed land and tried to do what they could, or whatever they wanted to do at the time. So the country I was posted in was called Niger, West Africa, and that's the French way of saying Niger, which is, we say it in English, we say Niger, but in French they say Niger. So I served for 2.5 years with the Peace Corps in Niger, and then I stayed for another year as a 5th and 6th grade teacher at the United States Embassy at the American School.
Do you miss anything else about Niger?
I miss a lot of things about Niger. In fact, it is my goal and hope that at some point we can take our Educate Tomorrow community to our school in Niger, because Educate Tomorrow has a program in Niger where we support an elementary school, we support a boarding house, so that our students who need housing, because they're not every, like, in the United States, every town has a elementary school, middle school, high school, but in Niger, that's not always the case. So we started an elementary school in the little village that I was in, but it's not big enough to really have a middle school or a high school. So our students have to go live in another town and go to their middle school and high school. And I was very concerned about the village that I lived in and the students there, because they have a caste society, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but caste means if you're born into lower income, the idea is that you should stay as a lower income person your whole life. And if you're born into a higher income, you should stay in a higher income. And so you have different rights. So the people that I was serving were referred to as slaves. And my concern was that if they went and lived with other people so that they could go to middle school and high school, that they would be continued to be treated as slaves. So we established our own boarding house that our team still raises money for, and make sure so that our middle and high school students can live there, eat, go to school, and not have to worry about the pressures of their caste.
Is there any cultural differences from here to Niger?
Yeah, there are a lot of cultural differences. There are very distinct gender roles. Men are allowed to do things, women are allowed to do things. Another thing is they allow polygamy. Do you know what polygamy is? Polygamy is you are allowed to have multiple wives. Men are allowed to have multiple wives. And in their culture, it's about 4 or 5 wives, I think. The rules I don't know what they are exactly, but they follow the Quran, and so they're allowed to have multiple wives. And so that was really interesting for me, to live in that experience, because here I was a white female living in a different culture. The other thing too that was really fascinating for me is how much racism existed among Black people. Because in my perspective, everybody that lived there was Black and they were African. But there still was a ton of racism between the different ethnic groups and who thought they were better and where the cultural privileges were. So that was really fascinating to me, because I'd never seen racism through the lens of like people that all looked alike.
Is the education system different than here to there?
The education system is different. It's not something that I fully understand, but it's based off of the French system, because they were they were a colony of the French. So they have different grades, like how we have middle school, high school, elementary school. They have a slightly different system, and it's broken off at different ages, but it follows that French model.
Is there any foods you miss from there?
Oh, yes. One of the things I didn't mention yet is that Niger is actually one of the poorest countries in the world. The average gross domestic product, which means like how much money somebody can make in a year, is like $365 a year. So the average person there made $1 a day. And so they had to use that money to like get food or supplies. And so my nearest vegetable, like if I wanted to buy like a vegetable, like a potato or a tomato or something green and leafy, I would have to go to the capital city, because we lived in the desert and we didn't have a lot of produce, especially during certain times of year. So we lived mostly off of like rice, millet, sorghum, and cornmeal. And so they would make these like portages, almost like an oatmeal, like kind of, oatmeal, like a porridge, and then make different sauces and put different sauces on there. So they would like pound up, like almost like a polenta. Have you ever had polenta? Or grits?
Yes.
Okay, so it'd be like grits. And so we'd put, grits, and then you put a different sauce on it. And so they made this okra sauce that I miss, which at the time I would never say that, because I did not appreciate it or like it when I was there. But my favorite dish that they had there is rice and beans with peanut oil and onions and hot pepper sauce.
Is there any places that you miss there?
So Educate Tomorrow has a piece of property that the chief of the region gave to us right on the banks of the Niger River. And it's beautiful, the sunset's beautiful. You can imagine it's 120 degrees sometimes in the middle of the day. It was a really nice place that we had like a rope swing on a mahogany tree that went out into the river. And even though as volunteers we weren't supposed to go in the water, we found a lot of relief in the water. And there were hippos that would come by. So I really miss that, and I miss that for our students too, because Niger is not very safe to live in right now because of some extremist thinking. So when it is, or if it ever becomes safe again, I would love to take our group there and go hang out in the Niger River.
Well, thank you for being here with our podcast. We really enjoyed you. Make sure to tune into the next episode.